a warm welcome to Arcn TV Guest. Our guest is the number one, the numero uno in the Agricultural Research Council of Nigeria, Professor Hamidu Garba Sharubutu. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Thank you, sir, and you are highly welcome.
Very glad to meet you and to know you. I want the viewers at home to get to meet you.
Well, I am Professor Garba Hamidu Sharubutu, a member of the National Institute. By the special grace of God, I have the opportunity of being the Executive Secretary of the Agricultural Research Council of Nigeria. I'm a very young chap of over 60 years old now, a veterinary surgeon, professor of veterinary medicine, and with specialization on infectious diseases. I've had my training in my village, in Kwande, the Roman Catholic Missionary School, and then I went to the Government Secondary School, Dam. From there I went to School of Preliminary Studies, Kefi, Ahmadu Bello University, for my Doctor of Veterinary Medicine degree, and went to the University of Ibadan for my Master's in Veterinary Medicine, and ended my academic progression at the Usman Dan Fodio University, Sokoto, where I had a PhD in medical microbiology. Today, I've also had other opportunities attaining leadership positions. I was a two-term president of the Nigerian Veterinary Medical Association and the president of the Veterinary Council of Nigeria. Another opportunity came my way when I was appointed as the provost of the Federal College of Animal Health and Production Technology in VOM, from where I was deployed to the Agricultural Research Council of Nigeria, first as Director of Knowledge Management. Then I was given the acting executive secretary before I eventually became the executive secretary precisely in April 2020.
Thank you so much. I would like to have an insight into your background. Did anything or any of your upbringing inform you that you'll be into veterinary medical practitioner, a veterinary medical practitioner?
Well, I grew up in a rural community, even though my community has eventually become a very big community. And my first contact, of course, like all other children, my first contact with the animal world was the little poultry, sheep and goat and cattle that was reared by my parents. And while I was in the primary school, the usual question that comes from one class to the other is, what will you like to be in future? And of course, it has always been, I want to be a farmer, because being a farmer is the simplest composition you can always put. So my father has been in love with the livestock, but the dream of becoming veterinary medicine never came to me until when I was at the School of Preliminary Studies, Kefi. When we went for JAM, first intention was actually to read geology and mining. And I got admission into the University of Jos to read geology and mining. The admission came very late, precisely on the date that they were matriculating. In those days, matriculation never wasted time. It was always on the time. So when I got my letter of admission to the University of Jos to read geology and mining, it came late on the date of the matriculation, so I had to go back. So when I was filling the direct entry form, based on the courses I read during my A-levels of chemistry, biology, and geography, the brochure showed that there are very few ways I can go. It's either I read chemistry, or I go for biology proper, or I go for Doctor of Veterinary Medicine. And so I found that opportunity and keyed into the Doctor of Veterinary Medicine program of the Ahmadu Bello University. And from there on, the interest grew because of the nature of teaching. And when I told my dad that I've been offered admission to read veterinary medicine, the question is, what is veterinary medicine? And I said, it's medicine that has to do with livestock in the layman's language. And he said, that is good. That means he can improve his livestock studies. And ever since then, anytime I come home, he will always point at one animal or the other of his and say, look, this animal is sick. Can you do anything about it? So you can see where the interest actually grew.
Apart from your being a professor, apart from your educational acquisition, what other thing do you think might have prepared you to assume the position of Executive Secretary of the Agricultural Research Council of Nigeria?
Now, when I was at the Usman Dan Fodio University as a lecturer then, I came into contact with the concept of research, with the issue of teaching, with the issue of extension. But truly, initially I had wanted to become an extension veterinarian, because if you look at the field of veterinary medicine, extension teaching has been a problem. So I took up the teaching of extension and rural sociology, to the undergraduate students of the Usman Dan Fodio University. I taught extension, veterinary extension, agri extension, and rural sociology for almost about 7 years before we got younger persons who came to take over the course. And by that time, academically, I had grown, and I was now a senior lecturer. Now, while I was in the university teaching, the concept of practical teaching in terms of animal handling, as well as exposure of our students to field practice, now came. And so I now introduce a course of study to our students, of taking them from one Fulani community or livestock rearing community to the other. So I took students to piggery farms, I took students to camel farms, I took students to cattle farms. And by so doing, I was now able to see in practical terms the need for us to go deeper into researching into agriculture and the problems of livestock. Now, one other area that really actually enticed and influenced my love, for the animal world as well as research, was when I took students on an excursion to the Jos Wildlife Park, to the Jos Zoological Garden, and we ended up at the National Veterinary Research Institute. There I was able to see the potentials of that institution as far as research is concerned, not only in the area of vaccine production, but also in the area of ethnopharmacology, where I saw in practical terms how they were converting some of the plant products into medicines for the general use. Now, with that, I met a lot of our junior ones who felt that, Prof, with your exposure, with your knowledge, why don't you find a way of coming to us and see whether you can transfer your service to the National Veterinary Research Institute? I didn't do that until I had the opportunity of being nominated by the National Universities Commission to go to the National Institute for Policy and Strategic Studies. While I was there, I became, the Monitor General of the group, that is Sec 35, 2013. And when you go to NIPS, the first place you go for excursion is at the National Veterinary Research Institute, because you go to the neighborhood in order to look at the surrounding. And being a veterinarian, being somebody that happened to be working, in very close relation with the staff, they now saw it as an opportunity to keep on hammering on me. Now, while I was about to graduate, a group of staff from the National Veterinary Research Institute approached me as to whether I had an interest in taking up a directorship position in that place, having been a professor already at the Usman Dan Fodio University. Of course, initially, I was looking at it with some reservation. But eventually, the advertisement for the Federal College of Animal Health and Production Technology came out, and so most of my friends now ran to me and said, this is an opportunity. Why don't you try your hands? I tried my hands, and on the day we were graduating from the National Institute for Policy and Strategic Studies, I was invited for the interview under Adeshina. Now, what interested Adeshina with me actually was when he went through my CV and he found out that...
That's the Dr. Adeshina?
Yeah, Dr. Adeshina. That's the then minister, because he chaired the meeting of the recruitment and the appointment himself. So when he went through my CV, incidentally, he found out that I had a farm. And you know, he's a practically oriented person. He wants somebody that is practically oriented. And when he saw my farm, he saw the number of people I have employed on that farm. He saw the number of cattle I have, and he saw the number of crops. So he looked at me as somebody that had an idea for integrated farming. So that was where he concentrated the questions on. And immediately I finished, he said, you are a very good candidate for that institution, and I think you are going to go high. In fact, at a certain point in time, he was advising the executive secretary of the ARCN, then Professor B.Y. Abubakar. He said, why can't this young person then go to any of the university to take leadership? Because it's like the volume of knowledge he has may be beyond that institution. But B.Y. told him then that, look, we need a stimulus in the environment of the National Veterinary Research Institute, because we have 3 veterinary-related institutions there. The National Veterinary Research Institute as an institute, the Federal College of Veterinary and Medical Laboratory Technology, and then the Federal College of Animal Health and Production Technology, then under one governing board. So he felt that if I am there, and I happen to be a member of the Internal Management Committee, I'll be able to influence activities in the 3 institutions that are related together. That was what marked my journey to becoming the Executive Secretary of the Agricultural Research Council, because immediately I finished my tenure at the Federal College of Animal Health and Production Technology. I was also engaged by His Excellency the Governor, because as at that time I had left Plateau State, Governor of Plateau State, Governor Lalong. As at that time I had left Plateau State for over 27, 29 years. I was in Sokoto strictly. I grew up there. I had all my knowledge there. I had all my promotions there, all my experience there. So because the environment of Plateau State now happen to hear all the exploit we have been able to put in the Federal College of Animal Health and Production Technology, that informed His Excellency the Executive Governor, Governor Lalong, to now appoint me as a special advisor on agriculture, and then eventually, based on my productivity, he also appointed me as his campaign secretary for his 2019 gubernatorial campaign. So you find out that the name went haywire. Now, but what are those exploits in the Federal College of Animal Health and Production Technology? Number 1 is the reorganization of the college, the restructuring of the college, because at that time they were not going collegiate. So I had to introduce a collegiate system. The second thing there was to modify the recruitment criteria in that place in terms of the number of students, in terms of the quality of students, and in terms of the staffing. So the recruitment criteria was modified. We now introduce numerous courses, about 14 courses, including degree program that we were running in conjunction with the Tafawa Balewa University in Bauchi. So all those exploits attracted so many people to me, including, of course, the then Executive Secretary of the Agricultural Research Council, who saw me as a potential, a candidate for the position of the Executive Secretary.
Okay, I am interested in your farm, about your farm, because you have a farm. And before we go to your farm particularly, since you were appointed as as Executive Secretary of the Agricultural Research Council of Nigeria, I want you to tell us about your mandate. What mandate did you, was before you, and how have you been able to go in achieving that mandate so far?
Well, the Agricultural Research Council of Nigeria generally has a mandate to coordinate and supervise our research institutes. The bureaucracy of trying to position agricultural research in Nigeria led to the formation of the Agricultural Research Council of Nigeria. Before then, the various research institutes and colleges were functioning in isolation of one another. There was no synergy between them. Secondly, for the process of getting anything approved, you have to go through Department of Agric Science, then it gets to the Permanent Secretary before it gets to the Minister for approval. All these things, if you look at research, it takes time. So in the wisdom of the ministry, there was a need for us to actually, as Nigerians, have an Agricultural Research Council that will be a regulatory framework to bring together all the research institutes, give them their various mandates, and try to see if we can monitor their progress in line with the policy of the government on agriculture. So when this organization was formed, certain mandates were given, and they were about 9 in number. The first and important mandate of the Agricultural Research Council is to advise government on matters that have to do with agricultural research, training, and extension. Because it is only when you are able to advise the government in that line that will be able to achieve it. Because if each research institute is given the responsibility to mount programs and do research, it is likely that we will just divert our attention to basic research rather than applied research. So that is the mandate, that we look at what they are doing at the level of government, the policy of government, and then relate it to it. The second thing was for us to be able to advise the various agricultural research institutes and design researches and how training was going to take place and extension. The third and very, very important was for Arcn to look for grants and then predict or propose budgetary allocation to all the research institutes under its mandate, so that areas of concentration can easily be determined when the various research institutes come to present their budget before the council, so that it will determine the type of money that will be given to the various research institutes. And most also important is the mandate that has to do with documentation of research, publication of research, and then coordination of extension service, so that research products can leave the confines of the research institute to the doorstep of the end user, which is the target population, the farmers. So this, in a nutshell, is the mandate. And of course, another one is for us to be able to link up with international organizations, be they donor organizations or organizations with like mandate, all over Africa, and of course, the world at large. And that's the more reason why the Arcn is the institution that represents the sub-Saharan Africa in the consultative group for international agricultural research. And the International Agricultural Research Institute are those that sponsor, like IIETA, those that sponsor Africa Rise, ILRI, and all other organizations. So we represent the sub-Saharan Africa because of that mandate of us trying to form linkages with all other organizations. Apart from that, we also represent Nigeria in the African Agricultural Transformation Forum. We are members of CORAF. We are also members of FARA, that is the Forum for Agricultural Research in Africa. All these things are brought under our mandate. But principally, what preoccupies our mind now is try to see how we can move research products from the research institute to the doorstep of farmers. And that was one of the things that gave us, the opportunity to actually attract a lot of funding from the World Bank for us to sponsor extension work, which we popularly call WAP, through the instrumentality of CORAF.
Thank you. Now, you are like the coordinator of agriculture in Nigeria.
Yes.
How many institutes or bodies do you coordinate?
For now, based on the act that we have just amended, we have 16 agricultural research institutes and 16 federal colleges of agriculture. 32 of them all under the mandate of the Agricultural Research Council. Now, let me talk a bit about the Agricultural Research Institute. Our Agricultural Research Institute, and to some extent the colleges, are produce-based, product-based, or commodity-based. And they are spread across the length and breadth of this country for the purpose of, one, satisfying the geopolitical arrangement, and then secondly, and most importantly, for targeting the various commodities and the potentials that are cited somewhere. And I will cite the example to you. In the Southwest Axis, we have the Cocoa Research Institute, we have the National Institute for Horticultural Research, we have the Institute for Agricultural Research and Training. That is a university-based, but sponsored and funded by the Agricultural Research Council. We also have the National Institute for Oceanography and Marine Research. Then when you come to the Middle Belt area, we have the National Cereals Research Institute, Badegi, that's Bida in Niger State. We also have in Ilorin the Nigerian Stores Produce Research Institute, and of recent, the National Center for Agricultural Mechanization has been added to us. Then we have in Jos the National Veterinary Research Institute. Then in the South-South, we have the Rubber Research Institute and the Nigerian Institute for Oil Palm Research. In the Southeast, we have the National Root Crop Research Institute. In the Northeast, we have the Lake Chad Research Institute. And of course, when you come to the Northwest, that is where you have 3 research institutes, all those sponsored and funded by the Agricultural Research Council of Nigeria, but had the status of being established under the Ahmadu Bello University. That is the Institute for Agricultural Research, that has a mandate for cereals, and then northern part of the country. And then we have the National Animal Production Research, that is in charge of animal production. And then you have, of course, the only institute that we have for extension, and that is the NAERLS, the National Agricultural Extension Research and License Services. These are the 16 agricultural research institutes. And then we have 16 colleges of agriculture also, that are also, so to say, produce-based. And in general terms, we have 2 federal colleges of agriculture that have mandate for animal production and health, one located in Ibadan, the other one located in Vom. We also have 1 agricultural research institute that has to do with laboratory scientists, the training of laboratory scientists for both veterinary and medical. That one is also located in Vom in Plateau State. Then we have 3 colleges of cooperatives. We have the Federal Cooperative College in Oji River. We have the Federal Cooperative College in Ibadan. We have 2 colleges for land resources, and that's the Federal College of Land Resources Technology in Jos, Kuru, and then we have the Federal College of Land Resources Technology in Owerri in Imo State. We also have Federal College of Horticultural Technology, and that one is located in Gombe, precisely in Dadinkowa, and we have the Federal College for Agri-Produce Technology located in Hotoro in Kano. We have Federal Colleges of Agriculture also spread across the length and breadth. We have one in Ishiagu, we have one in Akure, we have one in Ibadan too. Then we have 3 colleges, one for marine technology in Lagos, we have one for freshwater fisheries in New Busa, we have also one for freshwater fisheries in Baga in Borno State. Of course, I've forgotten that we also have the apart from Lake Chad Research Institute, we have one institute for freshwater fisheries located in New Busa.
Niger State.
Niger State.
Now, apparently, the Arcn is spread across Nigeria.
Precisely.
And coordinates all these research institutes and bodies. But how about practical farming?
Well, you see, let me also say this, that in order to meet the demands of most of our rural areas, and of course some states for geographical spread, we have found out that when you are talking about, for example, root crop, when you domicile it in Umudike, for example, you also have to take into cognizance the fact that you grow ginger, which is a root crop, in Kachia, Kaduna State. So you have also potato in Jos. You have yam in Benue. So in order to meet those demands, each of our research institutes has been given a mandate to establish outreach centers across the length and breadth of this country. Now, these outreach centers are not just for research. They are one for survey activities, so that they will survey the need. Two, they are for extension purposes, for the farmers to be able to assess what we have, and then to also conduct research in the various crops that are at the potential of those environments where they are located. So like root crop, for example, I'm citing an example, it has an outstation in Jos for Irish potato. It has an outstation in Kachia for the purpose of ginger. The National Institute for Oil Palm Research also have another branch in Gashua for the purpose of dead palm, and like that spread across the length and breadth of this country. So those ones are deliberate policies to put certain structures there so that, number one, nobody will be disenchanted, and secondly, those produce that are categorized under the commodity with which those institutions are created are actually taken care of. Then coming to farming, our research institute, we make sure that there is always a unit for extension purpose, because farming is extension and extension is farming. Because once you cannot take the product of a research institute to the target population, then you don't need to conduct research, because the researching will just be on the shelf. So extension is key component of this. You remember that at the level of the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development, there's a department for extension at the federal level that is responsible for policy formulation and some aspect of training. But in the various states of the Federation, agriculture being on the concurrent list, they are also mandated to establish their various research outfits, particularly the ADPs, the Agricultural Development Program. And you know the evolution of extension from training, visit, demonstration farm, distribution of pamphlets, and all these things. We have now moved to a more organized system of extension work. But the inability of the various state governments to actually fund extension adequately under the various ADPs made us to insist that every research institute must have an extension unit for them to be able to be capable of selling the product. And that was what brought the idea of having federal colleges of agriculture attached to each of the federal colleges. Like the Nigerian Stores Produce Research Institute has a Federal College of Produce Technology. The National Institute for Horticultural Research has a Federal College of Horticulture. The Veterinary Research Institute has the Animal Health and Production component. So all these ones are meant to train middle-level manpower, and by implication become extension workers, that they understand the rudiment of this research and understand rural sociology as well as extension to be able to take our research product to this. So the farmer in Nigeria is well covered. The only problem we have is for us to be able to adequately give the average farmer adequate education for him to be able to protect his asset. And for now, already we have made a proposal and we have distributed this proposal across the length and breadth for all those that matter. Federal Ministry of Finance, the Central Bank, the Presidency, and of course, the Federal Ministry of Science and Innovation, for them to be able to establish what we call entrepreneurship center, akin to what is the teaching hospital. You know, agriculture is the only institution where somebody will just dust his hand, have his retirement benefit, clear land and plant, without actually having commensurate training and outcome. So for you to graduate as a doctor of veterinary medicine, you need to do internship. For you to actually practice as a human doctor, you need internship. As a pharmacist, you need internship. As a nurse, you need internship. Agriculture is the only profession, as important as it is, that does not have provision for that. So what we are trying to do now is to establish a teaching hospital-like institution. A teaching hospital-like institution for us to be able to train our graduates to acquire more skills. And then, of course, to would-be farmers, like those that want to retire and go into farming, they should not carry just their salary and move into the field and begin. They will lose, because you need to know the rudiment of agriculture. So this is where we are. So there's adequate arrangement for us to be able to take care of the various farmers. And you remember that I am a farmer, and farmer in the true sense of it. Yeah. Since I was at the Usman Dan Fodio University, I got attracted to farming. And I started farming as far back as 17 years ago. I started as somebody that was just planting little yam on my father's land. And then, of course, I now grew to say, look, I have to go into cash crop.
I'm still coming back to your personal experience with farming.
But suffice to know that I am a beneficiary of this extension work, because I have taken farming to another level.
I want to ask about your concept of adopted villages.
The idea behind the concept of adopted villages was actually for us to be able to establish farming communities within a given locality that will be able to take research products to their doorstep, will be able to take quality seed to their product, will be able to take quality herbicides and agrochemicals to their doorsteps, managed by the people within that community, for them to be able to determine what they want, rather than waiting for a government worker sitting in the office and taking his facility once in a while to come. You know, because extension is something that is voluntary. It's not an involuntary activity. Extension teaching is voluntary. It is only when you want to learn that you come to learn. It is not like the formal education, where you will now sit down and wait for a teacher to say at 8 o'clock you will be there. Because you teach farmers, and farmers are usually adults. They have other engagements other than what you want to teach them. So you don't dictate to them when to teach, what to teach them, or what to grow. You give them an idea. And the only way you can have people adopt that thing is through reciprocal colleagues. Learning is faster through reciprocal colleagues. If you are a farmer, if I see what you are doing, I may be able to adopt. So the concept of adopted villages is to establish farming communities where you bring research products for them to adopt at their own time, when they want to do that, after they have been convinced with your demonstration lab. We also have adopted schools, and these adopted schools are meant to catch our children young. It's an improvement of the Young Farmers Club. So you come to a school, you organize the students of the secondary school, and to some extent primary school if they are interested, in order for them to adopt the farming techniques that is being introduced from our research institutes.
We're having time out with the Executive Secretary of the Agricultural Research Council of Nigeria, Professor Garba Hamidu Sharubutu. We'll take a break now. We'll return shortly. watching. You're still on Arcn TV Guest, and our guest today is Professor Garba Hamidu Sharbutu, the Executive Secretary of the Agricultural Research Council of Nigeria. The disjoint between our younger ones adopting or being encouraged in agriculture, going to farming, and the number of graduates that we have. We have lots of graduates who are unemployed, and yet we have so much that young people can go into agriculture. What's that? Can you explain that disjoint?
It's a very simple thing. You see, farming is a rural activity. You don't have a lot of farming within the towns. And so it's a rural facility. So it is that deliberate government effort to make sure that we encourage farming within a rural community that the Federal Ministry of Agriculture is not just a Ministry of Agriculture, but it's Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development. Now, if you do not develop the rural community, no young person, after staying in the city, having graduated with good water supply, with good light, will agree to go back to a typical village to go and sit down there. But if the light is there, the road is there, the water supply is there, an area for his religious activities, once that conducive environment is created for him in the village, that disjoint will not be there. What is happening there is that we have not been able to invest so much in the development of rural community. And you remember one thing. If you look at the budget of the federal government, and especially those things that go to our legislators in terms of zonal intervention, they are actually meant to target, those young graduates in order to give them incentive, incentivize them, in order to encourage them, give them the necessary training, give them the starter pack for them to remain within the village. But as long as they have trained in the city to learn even agriculture, they want to remain within the city and do whatever menial job they have to do, including criminality, rather than going to the village to suffer. And I thought, between you and I now, nobody in our own setup will want his children to go back to the typical village to go and say. It's only for people like us that have made up our mind. But we are going into this farming in a more modified form. Because my son now will not be able to carry a hoe. My daughter will not be able to carry a hoe. We are in the area of mechanization. That is not there. The tractor per farmer ratio is very, very low.
Now, let me quickly ask about your relationship, this Arcn and the Federal Ministry of Agriculture.
We are a parastatal under the Federal Ministry of Agriculture. But the Arcn is headed by a chief executive that is answerable through the board to the Honorable Minister for Agriculture and Rural Development. That is the relationship. However, a good administrator will always find synergy between what we are doing, because Federal Ministry of Agriculture is a policy formulation body. It's also, in a way, a regulator. It's a refocusing organization for the parastatal under them to actually focus on the policy. So the Federal Ministry formulate the policy, they give us a research direction, and we follow. For example, just recently, the Federal Ministry of Agriculture felt that science and innovation must be injected into the concept of research and production. So they formulated that policy under NATIP, handed it over to us. It's for us to obey it. That is one. Secondly, in order to meet the immediate demand of Nigeria following COVID-19, and of course the insecurity, the Federal Ministry of Agriculture felt we must concentrate on early maturing crops. So our research has now been diverted to the issue of trying to promote early maturing crops so that we'll meet the need, the food security need of this country. And then, of course, thirdly, the mere fact that the weather, the environment, the climate is changing and is leading to insecurity, farmer-herders clash. We have also been directed to take a position. So they give the direction, we follow. But the implementation of these directives lies with the coordinating work of the Agricultural Research Council.
Thank you. Now, I must commend you, not because, for many things, because since when you became the Executive Secretary of the Agricultural Research Council of Nigeria, there have been many changes, many things have happened.
Glory be to God.
One is this TV station, that's the Agricultural Research Council of Nigeria television and radio station. You were able to go out to get the license approved for broadcasting stations by the National Broadcasting Commission for the Arcn. Now, there has also been a facelift of this place. Many things have changed in this place. I have seen many things change. Now, can you tell us what advice, what changes you into making all these changes, particularly the Arcn TV and radio?
You see, performance is a function of opportunity. If you have opportunity, you'll be able to perform. The second step after opportunity is for you to study the mandate of the institution. And I think for a very long time, the workers, including myself, we have not focused on the mandate. What I have done, immediately I came on board, I decided to study the mandate and to give myself time and assignment to see what do I need to do to satisfy mandate A, mandate B, mandate C, mandate D, up to the last mandate. For the radio and television you spoke about, if you look at one of the mandates is that of research, documentation, communication, and extension. And based on my experience, the only way you can communicate effectively is if you are able to bring the ears and the eyes of your listener and the farmer closer to the source of information. And nothing does that better than TV and radio. The TV will give us practically in pictorial forms what you want to achieve. And of course, the radio is supposed to have a far-reaching target, even where you do not have the necessary infrastructure to listen to them. So that's my driving force. Not only that, the issue of publication is also there. So I look at publication, I target it. Then the issue of linkage, the first lift there has to do with what impression am I going to leave for organizations like our own in the international community. Go to Embraba, go to ICA, go to China, go to Kigali, go to all these places. When you see the environment under which their researchers work, you find out that it's far, far better than what we have. So if I have to link with them, that means I must twin with them. I should visit them, and they should be able to visit. Is that the type of environment I'm going to invite people to? What picture does it create about myself? What picture does it create about the government of the country? What picture does it create about the country as a whole? So these are the things that led me to say, look, let us do that. When we came on board, you find out that 5 assistant directors are sitting in one office. Men and women, people's wives are sitting together with people's husband inside one office. What type of environment are you creating? No reasonable married woman will want to sit with somebody's husband or sit with a bachelor, so to say, in the same office. Because there are activities, human physiological activities, that a lady will be doing that does not need the presence of a man. So I had to, in the first instance, insist that I must set up a building, and by the special grace of God, we had a 2-story building with 24 offices that we created in order to solve the problem of space. Of course, you know another one is coming up. We are just waiting for the procurement process to be completed before we start our administrative office. Then you don't come to an environment that is looking dirty, is looking very shabby, the doors are falling apart, the toilets are falling apart. You will not like that. So we had to bring up a facelift. The whole environment will have to change. We have to lit it so that anybody who comes to see our environment will fall in love with the environment. It's just like when you see a human being and you see him shabbily dressed, you don't expect anything out of him. Similarly, when you approach the house of somebody and you find the house very dirty, very shabby, so we said no. While we are doing the soft wire rehabilitation of the place, that is in terms of bringing new laws, new regulations, new ways of doing things, we should also be able to improve on the physical infrastructure that is there. Of course, including religious houses, because it's the vogue. And in order for me to get the attention of our people, we said, well, if you want a place to pray, we'll give you a place to pray, a befitting one. If you want a place to eat, we'll give you a befitting canteen for you to be able to eat. Make the environment clean, and then people will be attracted to you. You will now be attracting people, and then, of course, international organizations will come. Nobody will fund a shabbily presented organization. We cannot go to the international community and tell them that we have the capacity to do this, and they come to our environment and see us shabbily dressed. The same way we handle our resources, the information to them will be, this is the same way we're going to handle their resources if they give it to us. So that's the stimulus.
A break beckons. We'll return with Professor Hamidou Garba Sharbutu in a while. Stay with us.
In the first instance, I told you I started off with the love for extension agriculture. And demonstration is one method by which you are going to sell your idea, to sell your products, to sell yourself. So I said, if that is the case, let me go into farming. Like I said, I started with little yam, planting of beans, and I started seeing the advantage of having these things. First of all, for self-sufficiency in terms of what to feed. I have a large population. I come from an extended family. You know, within our own environment, if you are fortunate, or if you like, unfortunate, to come from a house that maybe has a traditional title or the chieftaincy, you find out that our intermarriages and the link between one family or the other is so diverse. So if you are progressively minded and God has lifted you, you find out that many people want to come and spend their holidays with you. As I'm talking to you, I don't buy yam, I don't buy maize, I don't buy rice again. In fact, I'm just ahead into processing my palm oil now. So one is for me to be able to feed my family without necessarily mounting pressure on my salary. When I found out that is befitting, I decided to introduce a tractor. And how did I bring the tractor? Get one old rickety tractor. It's like a Lister engine. Once you are able to rehabilitate it, fine. And of course, as the executive secretary, I thank God that my salary will be able to sustain some of my activities. So I now go into a lease. I'll go and collect a tractor from somebody, do farming work, get my own benefit, and give him on lease until I was able to contact John Deere to now begin to take my own tractor on loan to start. Then I had a very good relationship with some farmers. Like, for example, Rahama Farms is a seed producer, and I approached them. And he's ready to give me fertilizer on loan, ready to give me seed, quality seed on loan. And then, of course, he introduced me to Dangote Farms, located at Tunga, apart from my own traditional farm, which I actually bought and which I inherited. I operate on about 350 hectares of land.
50 hectares?
Yes, I have 100 for maize, and after the harvest of maize, I put sesame. Then I have 100 also for rice. And the other ones, what I did was to form a cooperative together with those like minds. We operate on 150 hectares.
Around 50 hectares.
50 hectares. And this one is community based. You bring in what you want, we allocate the land to you, we train you, yes. And I stand as a guarantor to give you either fertilizer or to give you seed. And you know, of recent, the federal government has this initiative of supplying seed. The recent supplementary budget was meant to supply seed. So we collect rice seed and distribute to people who want, and making sure that we give them adequate advice. By so doing, I can tell you that I'm able to raise a lot of things. But you know, our farming has a lot of deficiency because I practice rain-fed agriculture. And in rain-fed agriculture, you can really never determine the risk. But I'm proud to say that at least I was able to produce, for last year, I was able to produce over 1,000 bags of rice, 400 bags of maize. And then, of course, my palm tree is there. It has not been doing very well because to some extent in the village, I am an absentee farmer. And once you have something that you can really pluck and eat, because I have about 300 stands of palm tree, I have 300, yes, I have 300 plants of mango, and then of course I have some guava, and then 300 of oranges. And all these ones bring some income to me.
How about in your area of specialty, animal husbandry?
I think I have about 60 sheep and goat, and then I have now about 50. I've never wanted my cattle to go beyond 20 because I had wanted them, because I don't want to take the blame of initiating a crisis or farmer herders clash, because I am not on ground. So I maintain my stock within 20 and above. But just recently, because my relations saw it and everybody bought his cattle and brought to me, at the end of it, they wanted to dispose it. But I felt that they are all female, I'm going to lose, so I've bought them, and I think I have about 50, 55 now cattle. The feeding has been a problem. But the products from the byproducts of my farm is what I actually utilize in order to feed those cattle. So if you see, ranching, you see, ranching is a name. Ranching is a debate that people don't really understand. Ranching does not mean keeping animals in one place. No, that is not ranching. Ranching means keeping animals within a natural grazing land that is big enough to contain all their activities. In a ranch, you can have a livestock market. In a ranch, you can have a hospital. In a ranch, you can... So the issue of intensive system of farming is actually, because when you see animals on a ranch, you just think as if they are on free range pasture grazing. So ranching is not about keeping them in one place. What I do is I practice semi-intensive. Semi-intensive is I confine them to one area within the area of my farm, provided little area where I put some grasses for them, but I rely mainly on byproducts of my farm, like the groundnut hull, like the corn stalk, because I have a crusher on my farm. I'll buy even from my neighbors who farm maize, who farm guinea corn. I come and crush them, mix them with some molasses, and give them to my animals.
Our guest on Arcn TV Guest today has been the Executive Secretary of the Agricultural Research Council of Nigeria, Professor Garba Hamidu Sharbutu. Thank you for watching. I am Ayinde Shuaga. Have a good time.